Welcome to People Love Process. In this movie, we'll be showcasing how to explore colors in Adobe Illustrator using both the Recolor tool and Live Color. We'll also talk about the importance of using global colors and tints in both an illustrative and design context. So let's get started. Now, the process I'm always encouraging you as a creative to use is drawing. So that's where our process always starts. It starts on the drawing board, whether it's thumbnail sketches or in this case, a sketch that we want to build out and colorize and then recolor using some features in Illustrator. So this is the refined sketch that I created. We're going to go up here to the transparency, and I'm just going to set it for 15%, and we'll go ahead and lock the layer. Now, the first thing I do with any design I work on is I tend to focus on the easiest shapes first. So the easiest shapes in here are, of course, the elliptical shapes, circles, because there's geometric tools such as the ellipse tool in Illustrator we can use to build those so it makes the process go faster. So that's what I focus on first, is all the easiest shapes. Now, one of those aspects is within the headdress here is I just took 1/4 of a circle and just put it here. That way I can clone this, Command-C, Command-F, use the reflect tool if we go over here. And I have smart guides turned on, so it tells me when I'm over an anchor, and I can just reflect it like this. I can take these two now, copy these, Command-C, Command-F, find this orientation and reflect them down. So it makes the process go a lot faster if you kind of look at your design that you're going to create and figure out what are the easiest shapes to create and start with that first. And then the more complex shapes, if you think of the eyes, these shapes, and the lips of the mouth, those are going to take a little more time because they're more organic and they're going to involve the pen tool and using Bezier curves. So I cover all that in other movies on this channel, so make sure to watch that. When it's all said and done, we have all the base vector art as shown here. And even in my mind, I might be thinking about color. I don't really focus on color until I get all my base shapes in place. And right now, if you look at the sketch, you can see all these segmented areas out here. But notice how, like, for example, this line in my sketch goes down and goes right into the edge of the headdress she's wearing. And this line goes straight down and kind of dissects into an area of the headdress itself. I like doing that specifically with a certain style I call segmented. I haven't really covered that on my YouTube channel. I might share a movie about that this year, going into 2023, that is. And so I want to address a question that came up with other people who've watched other movies on my YouTube channel, and that's regarding the use of the shape building tool as opposed to the Pathfinder. And I use the Pathfinder all the time, and I've had a lot of people come to me and say, why didn't you just use the shape building tool for that? Well, in reality, I use both. It just depends on what context I'm creating in. So I'm going to show you an example and we'll make a comparison really quick. Then we're going to dive into the recoloring aspect, which is the theme of this movie. But I thought I'd go ahead, since I used the methods that I'm going to be covering in creating this art initially, I thought it'd be good to work in kind of an answer to that question. So I save shapes as I built. So here's like 3 paths as I was building this that I saved them. Well, why did I do this? Well, if I move this one, it's because I'm also going to use it to build the shape down here. And all I'm doing is building with strokes at this point. The same up here, it aligns with the drawing underneath, and the same up here as well. So that's why I do that. Let's go ahead and turn this off because we're just going to focus in this area. This is the only area both on the left and right, but since it's symmetric, we're only going to build these shapes that are shown on the left here. So if I go ahead and turn off that, we'll go ahead and focus on this area here. And we're first going to do some shape building. So let's go ahead and zoom in just on this area so you can see it a little easier on screen. All of these, we'll select all these shapes, which are making up the shapes. We're going to do some shape building with this background element, which makes up the area it needs to fit into. So we're going to go ahead and select all those shapes, and I'm just going to fill them with green and get rid of the outline. This makes it easier, in my opinion, to do shape building with the shape building tool. So if I select everything now, we can go to the shape building tool right here, and by default, it will add to shape, and that's why there's a plus symbol by the cursor. If you hold Option down, it's going to minus. So we want to do minus. So we're holding Option down. I'll just go minus there. We can go down here, hover over the center of that area and minus that. We can minus this. We can minus this, and if you hold Option down, you can drag over these areas too to get rid of them. So you could do that, where you drag over these two like this, and we'll go ahead and drag over these two like that, and we'll just trim off all the areas we don't need, and you can see pretty quickly you get what you need. So ultimately, when it's all said and done, everything is there that we needed. So I just wanted to show you that. We can go ahead and get rid of the blue shape. So we have all of those shapes now predetermined. So that's gonna work great. So let's go ahead and let's go to this Pathfinder layer. We have the same type of shapes. It's just going to be building them, demonstrating with the Pathfinder method alone. And we'll just leave them as they are right now. So what you're going to have to do with the Pathfinder is you're going to have to make copies of the existing shape. So on this one, I'll go Command-C, Command-F, and I'm going to do that multiple times, but just know that's the command. Command-C to copy, Command-F to paste in place, so it's right exactly where it's selected. So I'm going to do that. So I Command-C, Command-F, select this shape, and I go intersect. So we've created that. I'll select this again and do that same Command-C, Command-F again. Select this one, intersect it, take this one, go ahead and Command-C, Command-F, select this, intersect it. And that's all we're going to do for all of these is I'll do that same process for each segment that makes up these areas. And then afterwards, we're going to compare the two, and I think you'll understand why I tend to favor the Pathfinder. So we'll go ahead and get this one, select that, intersect it, this one, select that, intersect it. You can see that this method does take longer than the shape building tool, and I think that's why most people have asked me that question, and it's a fair question. I'd ask the same one if I didn't know either. So we'll take this one, we'll select this, and we'll intersect it. So now we have all of our shapes. So those are the two methods you can use. You can use the shape building tool, or in this case, you can use the Pathfinder. Now, on all of these, we've accomplished the same thing. We've separated these into shapes. But let's go back to the shape building tool layer and turn that back on. If I select, let's say, this shape, notice there's these 3 anchor points here. Or if I select all of them, notice how down here we have all these anchor points and these here. Why did it do that? Well, if we go to Pathfinder, we can select those shapes. Here's this one. We don't get any anchor points. Matter of fact, if I select everything, we're not getting any extra anchor points. The Pathfinder and the shape building tool use the same technology under the hood, if you will, using a car metaphor. It's called Boolean technology. That's how shape building is done. That's why every vector program, even ones that aren't owned by Adobe, have that same Boolean technology because it's open source. So nobody has proprietary ownership of that technology. That's why it's in all the various vector apps out there. But for some reason, the Pathfinder does it more accurately and doesn't kind of add anchor points to your art, which is really frustrating. So that's why I prefer the Pathfinder. It may go a little slower, but ultimately you get better craftsmanship and quality, because if you use the shape building tool, not always, not on every context, but specifically on this one, that's why I wanted to show you, this is unacceptable. There's no reason why it should do this. And the fact that the Pathfinder doesn't do it shows you that the math, the coding of that feature could be improved. But Adobe doesn't have any creatives on staff for Illustrator, ironically enough. They have beta testers, but even when you point this stuff out to beta testing, they never get around to fixing it because they don't think like a creative does. This is unacceptable. You shouldn't build this way. It's sloppy. So I just wanted to answer that question and point that out. Let's jump back into the context of this specific movie. But once I get it, I have everything here. And this is where coloring comes into play. This is where normally I've, historically, that is, this goes back to my Macromedia freehand days, which I used prior to using Illustrator. I've now used Illustrator 21 years, so a lot longer than I ever used freehand. But in freehand, you could pull swatches from the swatches palette out to the artboard. And I started doing this because they didn't have that feature. They still don't have that feature in Illustrator. And I like it because I could make value judgments between hues. Whereas if you use the swatches panel, you can get a little bigger than this by going to swatch controls and viewing a large thumbnail, but still it's going to have a white gap in between it. And it's hard to tell, because of that white gap, how one color value compares to another color value. That's why I do this, and it's helped me with color exploration, because then I can just focus on my artwork. I can select shapes. Specifically in my artwork like this, I can use eyedropper and I just sample whatever I want to color it. So that's what I do. Now, that's kind of a tedious process, but it's worked very well for me. So when it's all said and done, this is what I can get as the final base color on this specific design. And so that's fine. Now, here's one of the things I want to show you is that, well, first, I forgot, we have this treatment here. So I want to go ahead and add this to the background. Let's drag it to that layer. We can go ahead and get rid of that layer now. I'm going to select the background. I'm going to copy it, Command-C, Command-F. By the way, that Command-C, Command-F, I saved as a recorded action, and it's bound to the F3 key. So I can select anything. Let's say we select this color swatch blue. All I have to do is hit F3. So it's a one button push, and I have a copy of it right in place. So I never have to go up to the menu and pull down to copy, then go back up and pull down to paste in front. I have that set up as a keyboard shortcut. And if you want to know more about keyboard shortcuts, I have a movie on my YouTube channel. Check that out. It's really nice to set up your own custom workflows. So we're going to select this copy of the background we made, select our radiating lines that we created to use in the background. I'll go intersect with Pathfinder again. Then I'm going to go ahead and since this is a global color, notice the white triangle in the bottom right. That denotes a global color. A raw color would be like my magenta up here that I only use for building. That's why I left it as a raw color. But if you use global colors, it allows you to create tints. So if I go to the color panel here, it shows me what the value is here of my color. And now I can just pull this down to 85% tint, and you can see what it looks like. I'll go ahead and copy this, select the foreground with the lady in the headdress, and paste behind, Command-B. And now I have my composition in place. So This is how I'll use global colors, and I'm going to show you a few more things about global colors because I think it's really important to use them because it makes editing color at times far easier than trying to select every single shape in a design, especially if it's a complex design. So I just wanted to point that out. But I want to show you a newer feature in Adobe Illustrator. And you're going to need Adobe Illustrator version. Let's check out the version because I don't have it memorized. We'll go to About Illustrator. You'll need version 27.1.1 or above to use this feature. And this feature is called Live Color. Why it took Adobe this long to add Live Color to Illustrator, who knows? But I'm glad they did. So I want to show you how that works. So I'm looking at this and I'm going, well, I don't mind the colors in general, but I think we can improve on them. I don't know about this blue. And so this blue, if I select this, you can see it in my tonal family I created over here. It's this color. So all I want to do is I want to select all the blue in my design here. And I actually have that set up as a keyboard shortcut because if you don't, I just select one, I go up to select, I go down to same, and I go fill color. Well, that just takes time. And if you do that hundreds of times a year, you're going to waste 15 minutes of your life. So I set it up as an Option F command for me. So all I have to do is select one and go Option F1 actually, and it'll select all those colors. Now with those colors selected, we're going to go over to the toolbar here and we're going to double click on the fill color, and that's going to open up the color picker. Now, notice what we had selected looks like it's unselected. And that's kind of cool because when you see anchor points, they can kind of obstruct your view depending on your composition. Now, all we have to do is I can move this around and notice the colors are just automatically changing on the right. You weren't able to do this before. You could move it and then you'd let go and then the color would change, but it wouldn't show you a live preview of it just morphing as you're dragging over certain things. And of course, you can make these any colors you want. So you can just do color exploration this way to figure out what is a good complementary color with the color palette you have chosen and the other hues you have in your design. In this one, I want it kind of blue. I just don't want it a bright blue. I want it more of a kind of a muted hue. So we'll do something like that. That looks good. We'll go OK. Now notice it still has all the shapes selected, and this is important. I already showed you why I use global to do a tint, but global also is going to allow you to easily edit the color if you want to tweak it, because what the color picker does is allow you to visually explore color, but it's still a raw color. So you might want to dial in the specifics of the break of that color. And so you need to save the color swatch, because notice we have nothing in our palette that's highlighted. That's because it's not in our swatches palette. It's loaded here in the fill. So what we need to do is we need to go ahead and drag this into the color palette. And if you want to drag it and automatically become a global color, then you just hold down Command Shift and we'll drag this in, and I'll drop it right here. But before you deselect your shapes again, leave them selected because it's still not associated with this swatch, these shapes. It's the right color, but it's not saying, hey, this swatch is the one used on this color. So you'll want to click the swatch you just drug in. Now it's associated with this swatch. And what do I mean by that? Well, if we select this orange, notice how it highlights that orange in our color palette. And if we select this kind of muted green, it highlights that green. Well, now if we select the color we just created, it's going to highlight the swatch. And that will make editing easier later if you want to go back and tweak it. And I'm going to show you how to do that. But if I double click into it, notice that this is checked. It's a global color. Now, if you just drag it in without holding Command and Shift, that's fine, but you would have to click into the color and check global to make sure it's a global color. Just holding Command and Shift down as you drag it into your palette will just automatically by default make it a global color. So that's one way you can use live color. Let's go ahead and adjust this muted green, and we'll go ahead and select all the colors with that color in it. Click on the color picker, open this up, and all I want to do here is I just want to kind of make it more green. So we're going to bring it over here a bit, and I just want to make it a brighter value of green. Something like, maybe pull it down into green a little more. There we go. I think that looks good. Especially over here, it just contrasts way better than the muted. So I'm going to click OK and go ahead and commit to it. And the same thing applies. Notice it no longer associates with our original green swatch. It's created a new swatch, but it's created a new color, that is, but the swatch isn't created. So we're going to hold Command Shift and drag this in, and don't deselect, click that, and it will apply it to those colors. Now, let's say you wanted this color to be different now. Maybe you wanted it to be more of a, I don't know, you wanted to experiment. You still weren't sure about this color. Well, you could go back to the color picker, or you can go to the color panel here, and you can see the color that's loaded here that we have associated with that swatch. Well, if you click on the color, and our color mode for this document is RGB, so we're going to click on this RGB. Notice you get the full gamut of color. And so if you look at your artwork here, and this probably works better if you drag this over like this closer to what you're viewing, this is where you don't even have to touch the sliders. You can just use the eyedropper and drag it over areas, and look at how you can just explore color. Like a muted kind of a purplish blue looks good. Even pink looks kind of nice. Even a hot pink. If we go over here, you know, I think almost a lime green might be nice. And once we let go, it associates all those colors, all those shapes, that is, with that color. But again, like the color picker, there's now no longer a swatch associated to them. So you'd have to take this and hold Command Shift down, drag it into the color palette, and before you deselect your shapes, click it, and it'll apply it, associating this swatch to those shapes. And so that's another way you can use the live color feature, is in the color panel itself. And that way you can experiment pretty quickly by dragging that eyedropper over those colors. Now, on this design, I also wanted to add some detailing. And so if I turn on these tints, you can see I've created tints of like the base color used in her hair and part of her headdress. This is a black. All this is a tint of that color. So if we go to color, notice it's 80% tint, then I have a 65% tint. We're already using the 65% tint here in the neck area of the outfit she's wearing. And then here, this is again 85% of the base color of the dark orange. We're using that in the radiating lines here. On this lighter hue of orange, we have this color, which is based off of the base color. But if we go to transparency, this is where we can set transparency to this and adjust it if we want to use it other than a tint. In this case, it's just a 75% tint. But here's an example of this muted value of the orange, and this is going to be a shading value. And this one over here doesn't look anything like it, but it is based off of this. It just has been adjusted in terms of its value to only 40% of that base color. And then we have multiply applied to that fill because we'll use that to do shading. So if I turn on this, you can see with all of that shading in place, and I actually went back to this nice green color. I just liked it. So you can see between the flat colors in the face and the other areas of the body, etc., the hair, and the detailing we added in. I think that really dramatically improves the whole thing. Now, it's usually at this process when I'm working on color, if I'm not completely satisfied with something, even if I don't know what I'm not satisfied with, that happens a lot, and that happened in this case, I'll set it aside, I'll come back to it later, and that's what I did here, and this is where art direction comes in. So I looked at it again, and I go, you know what, I like the fact her eyes are closed, but I think her mouth's a little big. So I adjusted the mouth, and then I tried, well, what would it look like if I opened her eyes? So I did a version with this, and if you turn this off, she kind of blinks now. That's not why I created it, but as I was looking at this, I was going, I don't know if I made the shape of the eyes too well. They look a little off. Well, I'll just adjust those eyes. And so I thought, well, I'm going to redo the eyes, see if it looks better in a different way. And I thought this looked a lot better. But then I couldn't decide if I like this or if I like this better. And so this is where I bring in my daughter, Alyssa, who tends to play art director for me at times. But she's really good at looking at stuff, and she has a good sense of design. She's not a designer. She doesn't want to be. I tell her she could be art buyer, because she has a good eye for what would work and what wouldn't work, in my opinion. She looked at this, and I showed her the original, and she said, yeah, don't do those eyes. I like the mouth smaller, but I like the eyes closed. I go, so just this with the smaller mouth? And she said, yes, but those eyes look too fat. And I go, what do you mean? What do you mean fat? Well, they're too thick. There's too much black there. I would thin that out like you have in the mouth. And I'm like, oh, I didn't even think of that. And I go, okay. And so if I turn on this layer, that's what I did. I thinned out the eyes, and when I thinned out the eyes, then the nose looked off, because the nose before was kind of thick at the bottom, the shading. So I thinned that out as well. Made a few other decisions, like cut these earring details in half just to make it a little more interesting. Used a tint there again. But I really like this. But once again, I set it aside, and then I came back to it, and I go, you know, this is a pretty colorful design. And this is how color exploration goes. I tend to, kind of look at some and just let it sit in. I can usually figure out what's bugging me. And what bugged me is everything's so vibrant, but the black is just black. And so this is where using global colors really benefits, because I can just go directly to this global color, which is this one. This is the black we're using. And this is where I can go in and just edit this global color. I don't have to touch my artwork. So I can just punch in a value. I think I want this to be like a blue. You can see it's shifting green. That actually doesn't look that bad either. But in this case, all I'm going to do is make it a bluish color like that. Maybe a little bit. No, I think that looks good. I can click that, and now I think this looks a lot more artistic than using black. But notice I didn't have to select anything in my art. That's why getting in the habit of using global colors really speeds up the process. Now, if those global colors were also used to create a tint, like the highlights in the hair, these are just tints of what the global color was, these change as well. So it changes every iteration that color has been applied to, whether it's just a regular fill or it's a tint of that base color. So it really speeds up the creative process. So when it's all said and done, this is the final artwork. And now I want to show you how you can use the Recolor tool to explore other possibilities that you might not have even considered. So let's go ahead and jump to this one, and we'll turn that off now, but we'll compare it after we use the Recolor tool. Now, this is where there's one thing you want to do before you use the Recolor tool, in my opinion. If I select all this artwork, you can see how all the anchors just kind of show up. I like that when I'm building, But when I'm doing this kind of work, color exploration, I don't, because it kind of obstructs the view and I can't see smaller shapes. So you'll want to turn on hiding. So that's Command H. It's still selected. It just doesn't show you all those anchors. And this is what you'll want to do using the Recolor tool. So let's go ahead and open it. It's this icon at the top here. We'll open that up, drag it over. I really wish this palette could stay on your desktop like all the other panels, but it doesn't. As soon as you're done with it or you click on your artboard, it'll disappear. So you'll have to reselect art and reselect this icon to get it to come up, unfortunately. So now that it's up, the way it works is it truly is exploratory in nature because there is no set way to get anything. It's best just to try it and see what happens. So we can grab these arms here. They're all linked together as denoted by this icon. And we can just go ahead and move around like this. And this looks kind of cyberpunkish. That's not too bad. We can go over here. Oh, Avatar. That's what I think of when I look at it. And then we can go all the way, I don't know, let's go up here and see what those, and ooh, that looks kind of cool, like that. So you can get something like this, and if you like it, but you're going, I like it, but I wish this kind of lighter purple was a different color. Well, that's where you can click the link icon and unlock it. You can access what that color is. I believe it's this one. And then you can reassociate a color to it like this. Maybe you want it more of a fuchsia kind of color. Like that. That looks kind of cool. Or maybe you want it green. Or maybe you want it a teal. That doesn't look bad either. So this is how you can explore and just experiment and see what you can get. Now, you ultimately might not like anything. And this is where I suggest you save a copy of your original image on another layer, much like I did here, because I made the mistake when I first used this feature of, I thought it would just, I don't know. I don't know what I thought. I just didn't think of it ahead of time. And then I realized, oh no, where's all my colors after I got done because I clicked on the background. So if you don't like what you're doing and you want to get back to your original color and start over, that's easy. Just don't click on your artboard. Just click on reset. It'll reset your color to what it initially was, and you can go from there. Let's go ahead and let's go ahead and move it back to kind of this tannish position we had. I think it was over a little more, kind of like that. And let's say you like this. Well, you can go down here, and this icon, the bottom left, this is brightness. So if you thought this was too bright, then you could grab the slider. Once this is clicked, you could grab this slider and move it to the left, and it'll darken those values. That might be a little too much, like that. Or you might think it needs to be lighter, in which case you could brighten it up quite a bit. I think that's over bright. So that's brightness. Now, if you liked in general these colors, let's kind of get it back to where we had right around there. You could click on this, and this is saturation. So if you thought these colors were too saturated and you wanted to kind of mute the value of those hues, you just pull it to the left, and you can see it's kind of desaturating those values. And that's, I mean, if we go all the way left, you can see it kind of becomes almost like a monotone. So you can just visually adjust it however you want. I think that looks kind of cool. So that's kind of neat. Now, if you want to save this, but you don't want to destroy your original color palette, let's say you realized you didn't save a copy of it, well, that's okay. Go down to the folder, click on it, and go Save Prominent Colors. It'll take all these colors now associated with what you see in the preview to the right, and it's going to save it into your swatches panel. So we're going to click Save Prominent Colors. And notice it puts a folder in there with those prominent colors. So that's kind of cool. But if we revert back, if I hit reset and revert back to our art, well, yeah, but where did those colors apply? So that's what you need to keep in mind if you really want this to save not just the colors in the palette, but to save the artwork colored with those colors. Then you would definitely want to make a copy of your art. In this case, we're going to pretend we did, and I'm going to go ahead and reset it because I want to show you a couple other things you can do. Is our color is very vibrant, has a lot of colors in it. You can see all the ones that's identified here. So a lot of colors. This would have to be printed in full color. But let's say you wanted to do a limited edition art print. I like printing on uncoated stock because I think it looks more sophisticated and it has a slight texture to it rather than glossy full color. And so we'd want to limit the color. So how do you do that? Well, if you go to colors here on the Recolor panel, notice there's auto. You go down to all. What's that? Well, if I select all, guess what? It's all the colors. So you're not going to see anything different. Now, we have far more than 5 colors, but let's see what it looks like if it deduces this down to just 5 colors. When I did this, I go, that looks pretty cool. I kind of like that. And it's only 5 colors as defined here in the color gamut. And I'm going, wow, I wonder what 2 colors would look like. And I saw this and I go, holy cow, I really like that. You know, the 2 colors are this dark bluish gray and this kind of muted tangerine color. Now, everything else, and those could be 2 spot colors if you did this in spot colors, and everything else could just be tints. This could be a really light, maybe 10 to 15% tint of the tangerine. This might be a 20, 25 tint. So you could do tints of these colors. Maybe on the hair is full value, but then these highlights could be 70% tint of that color. So that's how you could think of this and use the Recolor tool to think through that. Now, as much as I like this, I go, yeah, I wish I had one more color. Let's see it. Having 3 colors looks like, and I'm like, oh yes, that is really cool. So we're going to save that as prominent colors. It'll add that to our color palette over here. And that is just, I don't know. I saw this. I like it more than my full colored version. Let's put it that way. So I'm going to actually save the art. So if I just click the artboard background, notice the Recolor tool goes away, but the color locks in on the artwork you had selected. So that's in general how that functionality works. Let's take a look at some other things so you can see what else you can do. Now, in my opinion, my artwork had some blend modes in it. And I'll discuss that because the more complex you have that, the more imperfect the results, in my opinion, that the Recolor tool will be. But it works really great with flat artwork. So let's turn this on. We can turn our sketch of the other work off. Here's a print, and let's say I want to do this for another art print, and it's an art quote. I love this quote. I'd like to paint the way a bird sings. Boy, who wouldn't? Okay, so all we're going to do is we're going to select our artwork here, go back up, select the Recolor tool. Again, you'll have to reposition it based off of where it pops up. It almost always pops up over the artwork you're trying to see. So I don't know why they don't have that. So you can just, I would save it in my workspace because I'm using this more and more as I go on. Now, I want to show you some of the other features because they're really cool. And the one I want to show you is the color library. Now, the color library, if you go here, they have a lot of prefabricated things like art history. There's ancient, Baroque, Impressionism, Middle Ages, pop art. I don't know if you know what pop art is. It's pretty cool. From the 50s, prehistoric, Renaissance, and Russian poster art. So a lot of different things. They have a category called celebration. That's just its own. You don't even go into other options. They have color books, obviously, like you'd expect in Illustrator. Color properties. So if you just wanted overall to desaturate, you could go ahead and use these to do that, or lighten it, or soften it, or warm it up, or cool it down. So there's those kind of controls here. Corporate, that I think this is everything but corporate, so I wouldn't use that one on this one. Then they have other default swatches you can experiment. So a lot of things you can do here to experiment with. Now, the one I want to do here is we're going to go back up to art history because I really like Impressionism, and we're going to click Impressionism. And you can see this is the gamut it loads, and you can see how it's changed the colors. So I think this looks pretty good. Now, what we're going to do is, I don't like this background color being kind of this muddy. I think that could look better. So what I want to do first is I want to go to saturation, and I want to move this up just a little to brighten it up just a bit, not a lot. And I think, oh yeah, I like that a lot. I like how it improved the blossoms, especially. And now I'm going to unlock this because this background color is too muddy still. And I believe it's this color. Let's check. Yep, it's that color. I'm going to move it up here. Oh yeah. And I like that a lot more. So that's how you can use it. Again, if you like what you created and you're ready to commit to it, but you want to add it to your swatches, just go down here, click on the folder icon, click Save Prominent Swatches. You can see it saved it right here. And now we'll click on the background to exit, and it commits it to our artwork. Now, this is flat colors, and I think flat colors work the best with the Recolor tool. Because when you get into blend modes, you get in a lot of variables that you might have set it up that way because of the colors they are. So once the colors change, they might not work that great. So let's go ahead and look at something that's a bit more complex. It has gradients in it. It has blends between one color and another color. It has transparency. And as much as this looks nice, let's see how it works with the Recolor tool specifically. So what we're going to do on something like this, if I select this, go to the Recolor tool, we'll go over here. And as I start mixing it up, you can see how it's okay. But in my opinion, this is where this tool doesn't do that great a job. It just makes too many assumptions to kind of work well in this context. So I wouldn't use it for something this complex myself. I would stick with flat colors, but there is something you can do that's pretty cool. We're going to go back to the colors here, and this one obviously has a lot of colors in it. But let's say this is the full color spread for a magazine, a gardening magazine, let's say. And the headline was up here, and they have some intro text here. Then it goes into the article. But maybe midway through that article, they want to use this illustration, but they want it to be a background, kind of a texturized background in the back. Well, you could turn it into a monogram. So if monocolor, that is, not monogram, we're going to select one color. So right now, it just defaulted to this green. I don't really like the green, but I like the idea of it becoming monochromatic. So we're going to go down here and select more of a teal color. The further you go to the edge, the brighter it's going to be. I think that looks pretty good. You can actually go down to the brightness. We can bump that up a little bit as well. And I think that looks really, really cool. Or maybe you want it to be more of a purplish color. You could drag it over here. And that looks equally as well. Or maybe it's more pink. Ooh, I like that. So that's really cool. Now, you might be curious, well, what do you get if you save these colors? Well, let's check it out. Let's go to the folder icon and go Save as Prominent Colors, and you get one color. Why is that? Because that's all it's used is one color. So these are all tints of colors based off of this one color. So I thought this was a pretty cool way to take a complex one and to overall simplify it, turn it into a monochromatic theme. We're going to take a look at a few more pieces of art. And the next one, this is a modern culture design I did. And all we're going to do here is select this, go to the Recolor tool, reposition it. And again, you can just experiment with color. Maybe you turn it like that. And look at this. I would have never, because of the theme, I was kind of sticking with Egyptian themes, gold, headdress, that kind of stuff. But this is like cyberpunk cool. I kind of like that. The only thing I don't like is the kind of blue in the lips and the cheek, you know, almost like she's a mummy of sorts. So that's where I'd probably go in and adjust those. But you can see it's very easy to isolate a color like that. You know, I might make this on par. Yeah, something like that. So it's really cool. Or maybe this gray. You know, gray is kind of out of place in this context. So maybe we made it red like that. Maybe it needs to be a little bright, or maybe orange. Get really or here. Like that. We can make it brighter. Oh, that's going to make it brighter overall. Oh no, it's only affecting those colors. That's cool. So you can see there's a lot of things you can do. Maybe green. Or again, let's stick with our warm colors. Purple, maybe blue. So you can see I'm just exploring here, and that's the whole purpose of this tool, to explore. So I think that's pretty cool. We're going to go ahead and reset it because I want to try something else. And this is one of the cool features. We're going to turn on this layer because you can use what's called the color theme picker on this Recolor palette. I'm going to select that. And then with our artwork selected, we can reference a photograph. So these are just placed images inside of Illustrator. And all I'm going to do is sample this first photograph, and it applies those colors over here. You can see what those look like. That's kind of interesting. You know, this is where I'll adjust things probably. I'll go here to saturation. I think it's pretty saturated. Or it's pretty muted, that is. So I might brighten this up like this. And I think that looks kind of cool. I would have never tried that. So that's why you'd want to experiment on something like this. Let's go ahead and reset it again. We'll use the color picker. And we're going to do these flowers down here. So I'm going to click on that. That looks pretty cool as well. Let's go ahead and brighten it up a bit. So we'll go here, and I'm just going to, or maybe mute it. Maybe mute it. Well, let's try the brightness. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, I don't like that. So I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to go to saturation, and I'm just going to bring that up a little bit. I think that looks pretty cool. It's definitely different. Definitely different. Okay. I don't really like that one, but that's okay. That's what exploring color is all about. Here's an interesting one. This can be anything. This was just like a painted, what do you call it? Painted metal. This was obviously a garden, and this one is just part of a colorful butterfly wing. So if I select this and go ahead and color that, I think those kind of tonal values are kind of cool, you know? And this might be a little too muted, so we could bump it up a bit like that. Maybe we go to brightness, see what that looks like brighter, and I think that's kind of cool. So a lot of things you can do, and using photography to derive color from is a good way to explore and see what you come up with. Now, I should point out, this is imperfect. It's imperfect, meaning it's not like you can just find a perfect photo, click it, boom, it's done. It's going to give you a starting point, and you might not like all the colors, in which case I think there's too much tan in here, for example, so I might deselect this and select the tan color and try something else just to add some variation in it. So there's a lot of flexibility. So just explore, experiment, and see what you can come up with. Let's jump to the next one. And the next one is, we're going to turn off our source photograph, is a really complex design. Now, this artwork is digitally inked. I did it on the iPad using Fresco and a vector brush. It has textures in it, and it has about, I'd say, 58,000 anchor points. So it's a lot. And I wasn't sure if this would even work with this tool. So let's go ahead and select it, click on the Recolor tool, open this up, and obviously you can just spin it around and see what that does. And this is already a multicolored design, so it's kind of fun seeing what it does. But I didn't like any of this. If I wanted multicolor, I kind of would have stayed with what I had initially. I want to try something else, and this is where we're going to go back to the colors. And I'm sorry, go back to the color library, and I want to go to Earthtone. And when I did that, I'm going, ooh, that's looking kind of cool, you know, but it's a bit dark. It's a bit dark. So let's go here, and I'm going to go ahead and mute this. So I'm going to bring this down a bit. I don't know, right about there. Ooh, that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool. I like that. It's like as soon as I did that, maybe more. Oh, yeah, that's it. That looks awesome. So this is like, I would have never tried this color palette, and that's the point of using these features. So definitely save this one, prominent colors, save it. It's added it over here. So that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool. Okay. Let's go ahead and go reset. We'll go here. We'll just see what pop art looks like. Yeah, that's why I thought it was just going to be bright like what we had it. So let's reset it again. That earth tone was cool. I want to try some here. This kind of muted, so we're going to go back down. I think that's close to what I had. Then I'm just going to kind of move this around, see what we get. Ooh, that's I like that one too. That's okay. I'm going to save that. So that's as easy as it gets, is doing those kind of tweaks. So that's kind of cool. Let's go here. Now, everything I've shown you so far has been kind of not not all of it was complex, but it's been more illustrative. And I don't want you to think this is only a feature you can use with illustration. It's not. You can use it in illustration. You can use it in design. Works great for logo exploration for colors. And that's why I want to show you here. So if I go ahead and select one of these, I like this color, so we're going to leave this bottom right one the same, but these other three, I want to explore other options for colors. So we'll select it, go to the Recolor tool, and this is where you can just start experimenting. And once again, experimentation is just about trying stuff. That's like Christmas. I don't know about that. You can just start moving around like this, and you might discover something that looks kind of cool. Like that again, you can unlock it. You can take the blue. Maybe you move the blue around like this. Maybe you go to brightness. You brighten it up a bit. That doesn't look too bad. Maybe this more of a blue. That kind of looks cool. So that could be one way you could do it. Or you could grab a mark like this And we could go back to those source photos and we could open up the Recolor tool, select color theme 1, and we can try picture 1. Yeah, I don't really like that. We can try picture 2. That's not too bad. Let's go ahead and adjust the colors though. Maybe we're going to make this, it's pretty dark, so we're going to brighten it up quite a bit. Like that. Maybe this a little more golden. Ooh, I like that. I don't like that color. Maybe a muted purple. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Maybe more yellow into it. Something like that. That looks kind of cool. So you can derive your start off of, we'll go ahead and save that. Now we can go ahead and jump to the next one. We'll do this here. Let's go ahead and go to the Recolor tool. Again, I wish that could stay open. First, let's see what this one does. Wow, that's kind of cool. That's almost like this one. Should have just done that. It'd save me time. Let's reset it and try something else. Oh, let's go try the Earthtones. Oh yeah, that was way too easy. Yeah, I went in and changed that. That's just nice. Let's go ahead and save prominent color and click out of it. So that's how I would use it in a branding context. Obviously, I'm not talking to myself when I'm doing it. Well, that I do talk to myself. I might have said, ooh, that's cool, that type of thing. So live color is a great feature. And it took way too long to make it into Illustrator, in my opinion. Come on, Adobe, you can do better than that. But now that it's there, it'll help a lot with color exploration. Remember, when you use the Recolor tool, make sure to make a copy of your original artwork and the initial colors you use so you can always go back to it if needed. Again, I made the mistake of not doing that the first time I used it, so learn from my mistake. The Recolor tool is a great way to discover new color palettes you might not have ever considered otherwise. So take time to explore using this helpful feature. It's not perfect, but you'll no doubt hit on some really nice color combinations if you do. If you like this movie, I'd appreciate it if you could share a link to my YouTube channel with a coworker or a friend of yours who could appreciate the creativity that would help their career as well. And make sure to like and subscribe as well. Thank you for watching. Once again, People of Process. And as always, I hope this content helps you improve your own creative process.